Hi, and welcome to week 4 and chapter 4 from your text. Hopefully, you're all working on your case study. I've gotten a couple of emails which I haven't responded to yet, but I will certainly respond to any emails I get from you. If you've got questions or problems or issues, certainly shoot off a quick missive and I'll try to answer any questions you might have. Make sure that when you're doing your case studies, you um, look at the case holistically, put yourself in the position of the decision maker, and explore all the possibilities, not necessarily just the possibilities that are mentioned in the case. Because when you're making decisions, you need to look at all potential solutions. And cases are often presented with just a few potential solutions, but don't assume that those are the only ones. So make sure you're thinking about the case overall and maybe thinking out of the box a little bit. So chapter 4, we're going to talk about market segmentation. This is what marketers do to decide who they're going to market their product to. Once you're creating a marketing plan, it's a key part of any marketing plan. Before you can do much more than tread water, you have to decide what potential piece of a market you're going to go after, how you're going to segment the market and target the piece that you think makes sense for you, for your product. You have to examine the markets and figure that out. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Picture in the background of the slide here. A lot of people think Northern Maine doesn't have beautiful beaches and only rocks. This is actually a beach on Roque Island off of Jonesport, Maine. So a little bit north and east of Castine. And I was there with my boat last summer. And it's probably a 4 or 5 mile long beach. And my wife and I were the only two people there. So it was kind of a cool place to be. It looks warm and inviting. It wasn't really warm and inviting. It was very beautiful, but certainly not warm and not water you probably were interested in swimming in. I was there in June. The water's pretty darn cold in June. So on to segmentation. So why do marketers segment, target, and position their products? Well, you can do what's called mass marketing, which means market to everybody. A lot of reasons that marketers move away from mass marketing to more segment marketing. First of all, consumers have become pickier. They want products designed for their needs, not generalized needs. So people are much more demanding. There's much more choice in the marketplace. And as there's more choice in the marketplace, consumers tend to want products that fit their needs exactly, as opposed to sort of fitting their needs and everybody else's needs. So mass marketing has gotten harder because of consumer demand. It's also gotten harder because there's less ways to reach a mass market. Um, when I was in college, uh, there were 3 networks on television, and that's what you watched. I guess if you counted PBS, there were 4 networks. But everybody watched the same thing, so you could reach a large portion of the market, a mass market, um, as a communication tool, as an advertiser. Really hard to do now because now there are 200, 300, whatever there are channels on TV. There's also streaming web entertainment products, and um, other methods of communication, along with radio and newspapers, and print still exists, but not really. So it's harder and harder to mass market because there are no more mass marketing tools. There are advantages and disadvantages to that. Obviously, if you have more focused media, you can focus your message onto your segment. So you've seen a strong move for all marketers away from mass marketing towards what's called segment marketing. And that means we're going to choose a segment to target, and we're going to choose a segment, and then we're going to target certain people in that segment to focus our product and our message on that group of people. Makes us more efficient, makes our marketing presumably more effective because we're talking to a specific group of people so that we can address their needs. So it's the way marketing is gone. You guys have grown up, most of you, in a market where you do have tons of choice, and there's a product there that's sort of designed for what you need. You don't have to make do with something that's for every man. So the definition of set market segmentation, it's about grouping customers together within a market, and we can group them lots of different ways. And every segment has niches within it, so that you can find smaller pieces within a segment that might be a target, a niche target within that segment. So you don't necessarily have to look at a segment as, let's say, personal transportation. That might be a segment, but then you've got cars, automobiles, and then within automobiles you have smaller and smaller niches, all the way from things like Rolls Royces to smart cars to Camrys, all sorts of different kinds of niches within that large market segment called personal transportation. So how do we go about doing that? Well, first you have to select the general segment that your product appeals to. So what does your product, the general segment that your product appeals to? Then you look at some variables and decide which piece of that segment does it fit into the best, and then select those segments that make the most sense to target. So there's your little chart there. Select the market, apply the variables, select segments for targeting, select all of the segments that you think make sense to enter, figure out which segments you're going to provide coverage on, and then position your product to meet the needs of those segments. So that's kind of the process, and so at this point we're at a fairly high level. The kinds of variables you're going to look at for consumer segmentation are listed here. So the most common one that people use is that marketers use, because it's the easiest one to use, is the demographic segments. So age of my target, gender of my target, family status, so married or single or with children or without children, empty nesters, all of that kind of thing. Those are family status questions. How many people in a particular household, income levels, type of work, level of education, all of those can be used to segment consumers. Demographically, geographically, you can look at distance from where you are, or how close you are to consumer, how close you need to be to consumer concentrations. You can look at regional locations or international, national locations. You can look at climatic locations. So I want to sell my product in cold places or warm places, or places on the seashore, or places in the mountains, or all of those kinds of things. Behavioral and attitudinal. What are the consumers looking for? How often do they use this kind of product? Are they price sensitive or not? All of those kinds of things. Those are a little harder to get data on, but important data in terms of segmentation. And then psychographic information, also harder to get information on, but the kind of lifestyle that a consumer might pursue, the activities that they pursue, what interests do they have, all of those kind of variables. So lots of ways to break down, slice and dice any particular consumer market. So here's a list of those segmentation variables, or some of them anyway. So geographic, you've got regional. So New England or the Northeast or the Southeast or the West Coast, that kind of regional grouping, if you're talking about the US. Suburban, rural, and city, very big geographic differences between consumers in those three kinds of places. So if I'm selling automobiles, a smart car might have a city application, less application in the suburbs because it doesn't carry very many people and you have larger households in the suburbs. And rural application for things like smart cars are pretty small because you're dealing with um, roads that aren't as good, you're dealing with longer distances to travel, that sort of thing. So where do I want to market my product? Um, you can look at density of population, you can look at a climate, you can look at terrain. I mentioned mountains or seashores, depending on the kind of product you're selling. Demographics there, age, race, religion, family size, ethnicity. Why ethnicity? Well, let's say I'm selling um, Spanish food. Um, do I want to have a population that has a high Hispanic um, content? That might be a better target market than a population that doesn't have a high Hispanic content. Something like that. Gender, income, education, all of those things are important segmentation metrics. Psychographic metrics, lifestyle, personality traits, motives and values. Really hard to come up with some of those motives and values, but values have a lot to do with people's decisions to buy or not to buy. I want to buy things from companies that mirror my values. There are value consumers out there. So how do I position my product if it has a value proposition? How do I position it in front of people that are interested in purchasing from companies that mirror their values? Behavioral benefits. What is the consumer looking for? How much or how often do they use the product? Are they brand loyal consumers or not? There are some people who become very brand loyal and some people who aren't at all. They sensitive to price or not? Um, some people will just buy the lowest price no matter what. Some people aren't price sensitive at all. Um, Everybody's different. In fact, in this class, I'm sure there are students who are price sensitive by nature, and then there may be students who are price sensitive because, well, hey, they're students and they don't have a lot of money. So you're price sensitive because of your economic situation, but if you had more money, would you be price sensitive or not? Depends on your behavioral makeup. Some people are and some people aren't. And then are you the end user of the product, and what are you actually using it for? Those are behavioral nature. So if I'm going to segment by graphics, I might look at what my ability to sell is in certain areas. I might look at whether the climate is appropriate for my product. I might look at what logistics advantages I have. Can I get my product to certain markets geographically more efficiently than other markets or more efficiently than my competitors? And are there any cultural or legal constraints to my product? So let's look at a couple of different products here. I'd like to use the example of cement. Cement makers are regional. And I don't know the actual metrics, but there's a certain circle around a cement plant that it's reasonable to deliver cement. And beyond that circle, it's not. It's too expensive to deliver cement. So cement producers and marketers tend to be regionally focused around their manufacturing facility where they're actually putting the cement together, and they have a limit as to how far they can go and still be competitive. You can't make cement in Maine and sell it in California. It's too expensive to transport. So that's a logistics-based advantage if you're close to your plant, and a disadvantage as you get further away from your cement plant. Difficult product to transport, expensive product to transport, and a relatively low value product. Climate is another one. So if I'm selling snow shovels, probably want to sell them somewhere where it snows. If I'm selling air conditioners, I probably want to sell it somewhere where it's hot. You have to be a little careful about this, and I like to use this example. Um, where do you think the largest independent retailer of skis is located? What do you think? Colorado, maybe, or Utah, maybe Vermont? None of the above. The largest independent retailer of skis, ski equipment, is located in Miami, Florida. Seems counterintuitive. Why would people be buying skis in Miami, Florida? Well, it is counterintuitive to a certain extent, but Peter Glenn of Vermont is a Vermont ski store that opened an outlet in Miami, and now has many outlets in Florida and none in Vermont anymore. They opened an outlet in Miami in the early 70s, I think it was, and it was wildly successful. And they continued to expand in Florida and eventually closed their Vermont locations. They had found a market that was very attractive because there were a lot of people in Florida who traveled on vacation to ski. And having been a retailer myself, I can tell you that people who travel to do something spend a lot more money on the equipment and clothing to do that than people who do it close to home. So if you're going to go skiing, if you live in Maine and you're going to go skiing at Sugarloaf, you go in the closet and you grab whatever coat you've got, your pants, the ones you wore 2 years ago or 20 years ago. You're not really thinking that I'm going on a trip and I have to get ready. But if you're going to Colorado for a week and you're spending a lot of money to get there and to stay there, you probably outfit yourself much better. So people who in Florida spend a lot of money on clothing and equipment for skiing because it's a destination thing for them. They're spending money to get there and they want to be well equipped when they get there, so they have the right stuff. And for the most part, they don't own it to go out, in the cold anyway, so they don't necessarily own that equipment on a general basis, whereas people in the north might own something that's usable for skiing, even if they didn't buy it for skiing. So that's why they're strong, and that's why you have to be careful when you look at climatic geographics. It's not always as obvious as it might seem initially. Demographics. Surprisingly, demographic characteristics are often correlative with how people use. So people in certain demographic groups do lots of the same things and use lots of the same products. Demographics are easily obtained. The U.S. Census has incredible database, and it's actually quite a good database in that it's very sortable. So you can use the U.S. Census data. There are other demographic databases internationally as well. So you can get demographic information pretty easily. You can slice and dice it pretty easily. So, and it works pretty well. People who are in a certain age group with a certain gender and a certain education level and a certain income level tend to like or need the same kinds of things. Psychographics a little harder to get some of this information, but activities, interests, and attitudes, some of that stuff is available as secondary research. It's out there in a variety of places. Some of it you would have to develop yourself as primary research. So what and why do consumers buy? And sometimes those psychographic traits cross demographic and geographic lines. So psychographics can be a more inclusive kind of thing. So you might do your demographic research, but then figure out psychographics maybe are more important to you than the demographic side in your particular product. And then behaviors and attitudes, once again, harder to get a handle on, and sometimes requires more primary research. But the values that we're looking for from a product or service, we talked about this: loyalty to the brand, if we're technologically oriented, if we're price sensitive. Those kinds of things are a little bit harder to group people because it's hard to find data that says, oh, all the people in this that watch this television show or that live in this area are all price sensitive. It's harder to do that. It's a more difficult grouping. to target. But obviously, if your product is a low price product, then you probably want to target price sensitive individuals. So how do you do that? What are the ways that you target price sensitivity? I'm going to stop there. We're going to go on in the next segment of this chapter, looking at B2B segmentation, so business to business. This was all business to consumer. Short few questions, couple of questions after this, and then go on to the second part of chapter 4. Thanks very much.